caring for a pregnant girl. I went back home, sold our $3 million suburban house, left my bedridden mother-in-law in a care facility, and went abroad. A year later, my husband returned with his mistress and their child, only to be paralyzed by what he found. A fine drizzle fell against the airport windows, painting everything in a bleak, melancholy gray that mirrored my mood. The monotonous drone of the speakers announcing flights echoed coldly, mingling with the hurried footsteps of the bustling crowd. Jake stood before me, adjusting the collar of his coat. His handsome, firm face projected a determination tinged with sadness in his eyes. He took my hand, that warm hand I had clung to with trust for 8 years, and his voice was deep and affectionate. "Be strong at home for a year, honey. This trip is for our future, for this family. This infrastructure project in London is a huge deal this time. When it's done, I'll have a shot at becoming the regional director. Then, we won't have to worry about a thing." I forced a smile, holding back the tears welling in my eyes, and straightened the lapel of his jacket. 12 years together, from having nothing to building this fortune, we had never been apart for so long. Jake pulled a credit card from his wallet, slid it into my hand, and said tenderly, "Here's $50,000. The PIN is our wedding day. Use it for the utilities, Mom's diapers, and household expenses. Mom's half paralyzed and has a difficult temper. Try to be patient with her. There'll be a time difference, but I'll try to call often." I nodded, clutching the card in my hand as if holding on to his promise. "You can go to work without worry. I'll take care of the house. Your mother is my mother. I'll look after her well." Jake kissed me lightly on the forehead, a hurried kiss, but enough to make my heart ache. He turned and walked through the security gate, his tall silhouette slowly disappearing into the crowd. I stood there, rooted to the spot for a long time, watching the flight take off on the electronic screen, secretly wishing for my husband's safety in a foreign land. That night, I returned to the large, desolate house in our quiet Chicago suburb. The patter of rain on the eaves was like the sigh of the night. This house used to be our shared pride, the fruit of our youthful sweat and tears. Now, without the warmth of the man who was its pillar, it felt unusually vast and cold. My mother-in-law, Carol, was in the first-floor bedroom, her constant snoring mingled with groans from joint pain. 3 months ago, she had suffered a stroke that had paralyzed her left side. Her entire routine depended on me and the part-time housekeeper. Seeing her restless and struggling to sleep, I thought of playing some of her favorite old show tunes, as usual. I remembered the old tablet Jake used to read the news, which he had left for his mother's entertainment. I looked for it in the living room drawer. The tablet still had a charge. I unlocked the screen. I was about to open YouTube when my finger accidentally brushed against the green radar-shaped Find My icon. Jake and I had used the same iCloud account from the beginning to sync photos and data. That habit had never changed because we trusted each other blindly. The map screen appeared. A flashing blue dot representing my device was at home, and another green dot, Jake's iPhone, was on the move. Normally, at this hour, Jake should have been on the plane with his phone in airplane mode or turned off, and the location wouldn't be able to update or would show the last location at O'Hare. But no, the green dot was still on, and it wasn't at the airport or in international airspace. My heart skipped a beat, a chill running down my spine. I rubbed my eyes, zoomed in on the map, telling myself the location must be malfunctioning or the network was unstable and showing an incorrect position. But no matter how many times I refreshed the page, the green dot remained motionless, fixed in a place about 25 miles from home. It was a newly built luxury residential area on the outskirts of the city. And more specifically, the location pointed precisely to a building, the Lakeshore International Maternity Center, one of the most expensive in the region. The flight with code UXC had taken off on the screen, carrying away my hopes of a husband flying to Europe to build a future. But my husband, who was supposed to be on that flight, was emitting a signal from the maternity ward of a local hospital. That night, I sat motionless on the sofa, clutching the iPad until my knuckles turned white. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and the wind whistled through the crack in the door like the mocking laughter of fate. In the end, was it the satellite that was failing, the technology, or my life that was going down the wrong path? 1,000 reasons came to mind to justify my husband. Maybe he had left a device in a friend's car. Maybe he had missed the flight due to a mishap. But a woman's intuition, that terrible intuition I always tried to ignore, screamed another naked truth. The next morning, I woke up with sunken eyes and a pounding headache. I hadn't slept all night, opening the tablet from time to check, but the location dot had gone dark at 2 a.m., leaving a huge question mark floating in my mind. I had just gone down to the kitchen when my phone buzzed. A text message from Jake. The concise text appeared on the screen. "Landed safely in London, honey. It's freezing here, and the network is terrible. I'm going to rest at the hotel for a bit, then I'll call you. Love you." Attached to the message was a photo of a steaming coffee cup on a wooden table, with a slightly fogged window and a European-style cobblestone street in the background. If it had been a normal day, I would have smiled happily and replied with a long list of affectionate words. But today, looking at that photo, I only felt an elaborate setup that made my skin crawl. I zoomed in on the photo as much as I could, examining every little detail. On the edge of the glass coffee cup, I saw the blurred reflection of a wall outlet, a distinctly American-style one, with the characteristic three-pronged vertical slots you see in modern buildings here, not the bulky, round-pinned type used in the UK. What a thorough actor, I thought. He meticulously prepared even the props to deceive his faithful wife at home, but was careless with the smallest details. I held back a sigh, put the phone in my apron pocket, and carried the bowl of chicken and rice soup up to my mother-in-law's room. Carol was already awake, propped up watching TV. Seeing me, she frowned and snapped in a harsh voice. "What took you so long? Are you trying to starve this old woman to death? Hurry up, it's time for my medicine." Gently, I placed the soup bowl on the table, helped her sit up against the headboard, and tried to keep my tone calm. I slow-cooked the rice to make it soft. "It's easy to digest. Did you sleep well last night, Carol?" Carol snorted, looking at me sideways. "Sleep? My whole body aches. Jake works hard to support this house. Are you so bored at home that you walk around with that funeral face? Take good care of me, so he can work in peace." I spoon-fed her the soup, blowing on each spoonful to cool it before giving it to her. While she chewed, I asked casually, "Mom, Jake's trip is so long, and I'm worried. Do you have the number of anyone on his team so I can check in on how things are going?" Carol, who was swallowing the soup, stopped abruptly. Her eyes darted around, avoiding my gaze, and then she yelled, "What are you talking about? You should be the one who knows where your husband is and what he's doing. Why are you asking me? He's doing important business. Don't bother him with pointless calls. Just make sure you buy me more of those expensive vitamin boxes. The last ones didn't do anything for me." My mother-in-law's evasiveness and unusually harsh attitude only heightened my suspicions. She knew something, I was sure of it, but she was hiding it from me, or worse, she was covering for her son. After lunch, I called the part-time housekeeper. I asked her to come and look after Carol for the afternoon, using the excuse that I was going to church to pray for Jake's safety. Carol, hearing that I was going to pray for her son, softened and didn't grumble anymore. I drove my old Honda, the car that had been with me since college, accelerating onto the highway. The sky was still gray, and the damp air clung unpleasantly to my skin. I followed the memory of the GPS location from the previous night, heading straight for the suburban residential area. When I arrived, I parked in the public lot and walked towards the International Clinic complex. This place was reserved for the elite, with luxurious facilities worthy of a five-star hotel. I wandered through the underground parking garage for patients' families. My eyes constantly scanned, searching for something I both wanted and feared to see. And then, in a corner near a row of jasmine bushes, I felt as if someone had squeezed my heart. The shiny black Mercedes with the familiar license plate, Jake 88, stood there, imposing. It was the car Jake cherished like gold. The same car he told me before he left that he would leave in the garage of a close friend named Alan to be looked after during his year-long absence. He said that leaving it at home unused would damage it and take up space in the driveway. I had been foolishly naive. I walked over and touched the hood. The cold metal seeped into my hand, making me shiver. On the passenger seat, I saw a pastel pink cat-shaped lumbar support cushion, a youthful, childish item Jake would never have bought for me, and that he would never use himself. It turned out the trip to London was just a clumsy farce, and my husband hadn't gone very far. He was right here, very close to me, but he belonged to another world of which I had no idea. The icy chill of the hospital's underground garage seemed to seep into every fiber of my body, despite my thick jacket. I pulled down the brim of my cap, adjusted the surgical mask to cover almost my entire face, leaving only my bloodshot eyes from insomnia visible. I walked between the rows of luxury cars. The scuff of my sneakers against the concrete floor made a grating, annoying sound. The private elevator for the VIP area lit up. I slipped in behind a group of nurses pushing medicine carts, trying to make myself as small as possible so no one would notice my strange presence. The red number 3 blinked on the electronic panel and stopped. The elevator doors opened, and a soft but luxurious scent of lemongrass essential oil filled my nose. Very different from the strong smell of disinfectant in regular treatment areas, the VIP area hallway was carpeted in deep red velvet, deserted and silent to the point where I could hear my own heart pounding. Guided by the memory of the GPS location from the previous night, I crept towards room 305 at the end of the hall. The room door was slightly ajar, letting out a small sliver of light and the sound of a soft music program on the TV. I held my breath, pressed myself against the cold wall, and peered through the narrow opening. The scene inside was like a sharp, cruel, and relentless knife, stabbing directly into my already trembling heart, shattering all the trust and hope I had cultivated. On the immaculate white hospital bed, a young woman with long, wavy hair was propped up on a pillow. Her plump, rosy face radiated contentment. She wore pastel pink silk pajamas, her swollen belly clearly visible under the thin fabric. Sitting beside her in a plush armchair was Jake, the husband who just yesterday had hugged me at the airport, talking about a bright future in Europe. He was carefully peeling apple slices, a gesture so meticulous and tender that I had never received in our 12 years of marriage. He brought the apple slice to the girl's mouth, his eyes gazing at her with an indulgence and love I thought he had only reserved for me on our wedding day. The girl playfully pushed it away, her voice as sweet as honeyed sugar. "I don't want an apple, I want that lobster bisque you made. The old woman at home doesn't suspect anything, does she? What if she finds out you didn't go to London and are here taking care of your son and me?" Jake let out a laugh, a deep, familiar laugh that now sounded so jarring and fake. He put down the apple plate, gently stroked the girl's hair, and said dismissively, "You worry too much. That old fool? She just does what I tell her." I gave her the $50,000 card and her eyes lit up. She's probably busy taking care of my mother at home now. Where would she find the time to investigate? You just relax and take care of your pregnancy. This child is the heir to our family. He's more important than anything else in this world. I stood paralyzed in the hallway, covering my mouth with both hands to keep from letting out a choked sob. It turned out that in his eyes, I was just a stupid old fool, a luxury servant paid with the very money I had helped earn. I remembered the days I deprived myself of food and clothes, not daring to buy an expensive lipstick, saving every penny so he could start his business and get to where he was today. And now he was using that same sacrifice to support another home, another woman, and the child I had longed for my whole life but could never have. Chloe, that was her name. I guessed it from the name on the medical chart hanging at the head of the bed. She narrowed her eyes and smiled, stroking her belly. "You promise, right? After the child is born, you have to bring us home with dignity. I don't want to be the mistress forever. Our son needs a father." Jake leaned in and kissed her on the forehead, his voice firm. "Of course. Just wait until I get the last of the land deeds your parents left you, and I'll kick her to the curb. Then, the house in the suburbs will be yours and our son's. You can renovate it however you like." Every word of his was like a hammer blow to my head, shattering what little reason I had left. I wanted to storm in, to scratch, to scream to the whole world the true face of this treacherous man, but my feet were cemented to the velvet carpet, unable to move. I looked at myself, reflected in the glass of the hallway window. A woman in her late 30s, dressed in simple clothes, with eyes sunken from worry. Compared to the young, fresh mistress inside, I was truly a pathetic failure. I didn't cry. Strangely, upon witnessing my husband caressing another woman, I didn't shed a single tear. I only felt disgust, a nausea rising in my throat. It turned out the plane ticket to London was a one-way ticket that took me from the paradise of happiness to hell on earth, where the human heart was colder than ice. I turned and walked quickly towards the elevator, leaving behind the ajar door of room 305, which hid the dirty secrets of a marriage rotten from the inside. I drove away from the hospital. My hands were still shaking, but my mind began to clear in a terrifying way. I didn't go straight home, but stopped at a quiet coffee shop tucked away in an alley, choosing the darkest corner to sit. I took out my phone and dialed the number of Mike, a close friend from college who now ran a private investigation and cybersecurity firm. Mike noticed the tremor in my voice but didn't ask many questions. He just told me to send him the location and necessary information, and he would take care of it. I sent him the car's license plate, phone number, and the address of the clinic I had just left, secretly wishing that what I had seen was just a nightmare. As evening fell, while I sat stunned, watching the black coffee drops fall to the bottom of the cup, my phone vibrated, announcing a new email. The subject line was brief: "Dossier has shown urgent." The sender was Mike. I took a deep breath, and my trembling finger touched the screen. The attached file downloaded quickly. Before my eyes appeared a series of images and detailed information that chilled my blood. It wasn't just a simple affair. Jake had built a second life, a complete family behind my back for a long time. According to Mike's report, Jake had rented a luxury apartment for Chloe in the city's most exclusive area 2 years ago. It was the same apartment complex I had dreamed of moving to for its good security and green spaces. But Jake had refused, saying the condo fees were too high and it was a waste of money. It turned out he didn't mind spending, he just didn't want to spend on me. The lease was in Jake's name, for a term of 5 years, paid in a lump sum every 6 months. Furthermore, there were bank transaction statements from a secondary account whose existence I was unaware of. Every month, on the 15th, Jake regularly transferred $5,000 to Chloe's account with the description living expenses. The figure of $5,000 danced before my eyes, mocking the $50,000 he had given me to take care of the entire family for a year. With me, he calculated every cent of the grocery bill, every box of medicine for his mother, but with his mistress, he spent without a second thought. I scrolled to see the photos taken by the detective. In the pictures, Jake, in shorts and a t-shirt, was carrying a shopping basket alongside Chloe in the supermarket below their building. He was smiling and talking cheerfully, pointing at the vegetable stand. He had the relaxed look of a family man enjoying simple happiness. There was a photo of them choosing baby items in a maternity store. Jake held up a pair of tiny shoes, looking at them with eyes bright with joy. Another photo showed him tying Chloe's shoelaces, as her advanced pregnancy made it difficult for her to bend down. A tender gesture that, when I sprained my foot and it swelled up, he just tossed me a tube of ointment, telling me to massage it myself on the days he claimed to be working late, going on business trips, or out for drinks with clients. It turned out those were the days he returned to that apartment where hot meals and a young, beautiful mistress awaited him. I closed the laptop, feeling as if someone had sucked all the air out of my chest. This betrayal wasn't just physical. It had taken deep root in the soul, in every corner of my life. He had been systematically, cunningly, and cruelly deceiving me for 2 long years. I remembered the times I saved and deprived myself of food to buy him a designer shirt, while I wore the same old clothes over and over. I remembered the sleepless nights I spent worrying when he claimed to be on a business trip, fearing he wasn't eating well. All my care and sacrifice had become a joke, a pathetic folly. The phone rang again, interrupting my bitter thoughts. It was Mike. His voice was hesitant and full of concern. "Eleanor, I'm going to send you another file. This one is more important." I checked Jake's transaction history and some of his work emails. "You have to stay calm. This isn't just infidelity. It involves legal matters and properties." I gripped the phone. My voice was cold but firm. "Send it. I can handle it. What more can hurt me at this point?" But I was wrong. The human heart was far more twisted than I imagined, and what was about to be revealed was far more terrible than just sharing a husband. That night, I returned home as the clock struck midnight. The house was plunged into darkness. Only a yellow nightlight glowed in my mother-in-law's room. Carol was fast asleep, her snores echoing in the silence. I tiptoed up to the second floor, straight to Jake's home office. Normally, he strictly forbade me from going near that place, under the pretext that he handled confidential matters. But now, while he slept peacefully beside his mistress, this forbidden door had become more vulnerable than ever. I turned on Jake's desktop computer, and the screen lit up, asking for a password. Before, his password had always been our wedding day, but I knew that when a person changes, so do their numbers. I tried entering Chloe's date of birth, which I had seen in the detective's report, 12051998. Incorrect password. I tried again. This time, I tried the baby's expected due date or a number related to their new home. I remembered the license plate of the Mercedes he used, Jake 88. Also incorrect. Suddenly, I remembered the look he had given Chloe in the hospital, the look of a man madly in love. I tried entering her initials, followed by a phrase, "My love C." The screen lit up, and the Windows interface welcomed me to the secret world of my exemplary husband. My heart was beating so fast it felt like it would burst from my chest. I didn't rush to look at photos or messages. Following Mike's instructions, I searched for hidden folders with innocuous names like Project Data or System 32, hidden deep within the drive. Mike had discreetly installed a small spyware program in an email he had sent to Jake that afternoon, disguised as an advertisement, allowing me to access encrypted files. And what appeared before me made my hands and legs go weak, forcing me to grab the edge of the desk to keep from falling. It wasn't just Chloe's living expenses, but a complete system of shady and risky financial transactions. Jake was dabbling in cryptocurrency and online sports betting on a large scale. Rows of transfer orders in bright red, negative numbers amounting to hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars, filled a debt-tracking spreadsheet. It turned out his polished and successful appearance was just an empty shell, hiding a compulsive gambler on the brink of bankruptcy. He had suffered massive losses, accumulating debts with loan sharks and even the local mob. But what left me frozen wasn't his debt, but how he planned to pay it off. I found a scanned copy of the mortgage contract for the old condo in Lincoln Park. It was my personal property, acquired before we married, which was rented out to cover my expenses. The contract was for a $200,000 loan with a shady finance company. Below, my signature appeared clear and precise, with the soft, curved handwriting 99% identical to my real signature. He had forged my signature and faked a power of attorney to mortgage the home I had earned with the sweat of my brow, plunging it into the mire of his debts. I kept scrolling down, a cold sweat drenching my back. There were emails exchanged with a lawyer about diverting company assets. He was secretly transferring capital, machinery, and lucrative contracts to a newly created shell company. The person listed as the legal representative was none other than Chloe. He was bleeding our joint marriage enterprise dry, turning it into a hollow shell with massive tax debts, and then transferring all legal responsibility to me, who was listed on paper as the deputy director. Animal. "You're a beast," I seethed through clenched teeth, tears of rage overflowing. It turned out this trip to London wasn't just to be with his mistress, but also a crucial step to flee the creditors who were relentlessly pursuing him, and at the same time, create an alibi for the company's collapse. He had meticulously calculated every step, pushing his wife towards jail and debt, while he quietly enjoyed his mistress and the assets he had siphoned off. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual, maintaining a calm composure, as if I hadn't discovered the horrible secrets of the previous night. I called Dr. Evans, the family doctor who had been monitoring our family's health for years, for a routine checkup for my mother-in-law. Dr. Evans was a kind man, but somewhat timid and afraid of getting involved in legal matters. I was subtle in suggesting an audit of assets and some unusual medical expenses, which made him nervous. While he was attending to Carol, I invited him into the living room for a drink and placed a thick envelope on the table next to a screenshot of a text message. The message showed him receiving a kickback from Jake for prescribing expensive medications. "Dr. Evans, I know you're a good man, but Jake has been acting strangely lately. My mother has been sleeping constantly, sometimes awake and sometimes dazed, and her health is deteriorating rapidly. I suspect there's a problem with the medication you're giving her," I said slowly, fixing my eyes on him. The old doctor began to sweat profusely. His hand trembled as he held the glass of water, and he stammered, "Mrs. Eleanor, I was just following Jake's instructions. He said your mother couldn't sleep well and cried at night, and that she needed a stronger dose of sedatives to help her sleep well so you kids could work in peace." "Stronger sedatives?" I smiled bitterly. "Strong enough to turn a conscious elderly person into a soulless shell? You know that if this comes out, you'll lose your medical license and go to jail for complicity in poisoning." Dr. Evans turned pale as a ghost, hastily confessing that Jake had forced him to prescribe a type of high-dose psychotropic drug, a drug prohibited for long-term use in the elderly because it causes cognitive decline and dependence. After dismissing the doctor with the promise that I would review the case, I returned to Carol's room. She was still dazed, her eyes closed, mumbling nonsensical words. I gently lifted her head to adjust her pillow. My hand touched a hard, crunchy object under the soft fabric. I reached inside the pillowcase and pulled out an unlabeled white plastic bottle containing light blue pills. This was the medicine Jake had secretly given to the housekeeper, warning her to crush it and mix it with her mother's milk every night. I held the bottle in my hand with a mixture of pain and fury. Jake was cruel to his wife, but even with his own mother, the one who had birthed and raised him, he had no mercy. He was using her as a tool, a fake burden to tie me to the house, keeping me busy caring for her so I wouldn't have time to pay attention to his shady dealings outside. Just then, Carol stirred, and her glassy eyes slowly opened. Perhaps because I hadn't given her her special milk that morning, she was a bit more lucid than usual. She saw the pill bottle in my hand, and her eyes reflected a flicker of terror that quickly turned to anger. She tried to sit up, her voice hoarse but clear. Give me that. It's the vitamin Jake bought for me. Are you trying to steal from me?" I looked at her with a heavy heart. "Mother, this isn't a vitamin. It's poison your son is giving you to drive you mad. Do you know where he is?" Carol fell silent, turning her face away, avoiding my gaze. But as if she couldn't hold it in any longer, she blurted out a sentence that froze me to the core. "I know he didn't go to London. He's here with Chloe. He said she's pregnant with his son, the heir to the family." It turned out she knew everything. She knew her son was unfaithful. She knew he had an illegitimate grandson, and she had chosen silence to be an accomplice in the deceit, just for her obsession with having an heir. But she hadn't realized that her precious son was poisoning his own mother to achieve his goals. I left the pill bottle on the table, looking at the sick old woman huddled in the bed. I felt rage and pity at the same time. She was just another pawn on Jake's board of ambition. The door to my mother-in-law's room closed behind me, separating me from the raw truth that had just been revealed. The unlabeled bottle of white pills was in my jacket pocket, but its weight felt like it was holding down my soul, making every step I took heavy as lead. I dragged my feet towards the master bedroom, which was once the happiest of homes, now only covered in coldness and lies. My eyes stopped on the safe, embedded in the wall behind the large landscape painting, where the family's most important documents and the secrets Jake had tried so hard to hide were kept. My trembling fingers approached the digital keypad, and I took a deep breath to calm my racing heart. Before, the safe's password was our wedding anniversary date, a number Jake had said was the most sacred in his life. But now I knew that number meant nothing. I remembered the detailed report from the detective Mike and the birth date of the girl named Chloe, December 5th, 1998. My fingers slid over the cold keypad, pressing each number slowly. 120519998. A dry beep sounded. The light turned green, and the thick steel door swung open, revealing the darkest calculations of the human heart. Inside the safe, beside some cash and property documents, what hit my eyes was a thick file held together by a blue binder. I took it out, and my trembling hands opened the pages. It was a life insurance contract of an extremely large value, signed 6 months ago. The insured, Eleanor Miller. The sole beneficiary, Jacob Miller. The compensation amount was $1 million in the event of the insured's accidental death. My hands and legs went weak, and I slid down to the cold floor. The contract fell to the ground. The numbers and words danced before my eyes like curses. $1 million. That was the price my husband, with whom I shared a bed and table, had put on my life. It turned out his recent worries and warnings for me to be careful when walking weren't out of love, but because he was waiting for an accident to happen to legally claim that huge sum of money. But the most horrible part wasn't over yet. Between the pages of the contract was a handwritten note in Jake's familiar script. It listed methods to simulate an accident: a gas leak in the kitchen, brake failure on a mountain pass, an electrocution accident in the bathroom. Each line was like a sharp knife stabbing directly into my heart. He didn't just want a divorce. He didn't just want to seize the assets, he wanted me to disappear from this world forever so he could enjoy a life of wealth with his mistress and their son. My tears flowed, hot and salty. I cried without making a sound. Fear mixed with disgust constricted my throat. I remembered the times Jake had offered to check the gas stove, the times he had taken my car for maintenance at strange workshops. It turned out death had been hovering around me all this time, under the guise of an exemplary husband. I looked around the spacious bedroom. His shadow was everywhere, and now every corner of the house seemed terrifying, like a death trap. I knew I couldn't break down now. I had to live. I had to escape the clutches of this demon in human skin, and above all, I had to make him pay for his cruelty. I wiped away my tears, took photos of the entire insurance file and the handwritten note, and then carefully arranged everything exactly as it was. I closed the safe. The click of the lock sounded like the closing of the last door of trust and love. From that moment on, Jake Miller was no longer my husband. He was my enemy, the greatest danger I had to face. The clock struck 8 p.m. as I sat stunned by the cold dinner table. Suddenly, the phone vibrated loudly, and the screen displayed "My dearest husband" next to a video call request. My heart clenched, and the feeling of nausea rose in my throat again. I took a deep breath, forced an expression onto my face, smoothed my messy hair, and pressed the accept button. Jake's face filled the phone screen. He was wearing a thick padded jacket, a wool scarf, and a beanie covering his ears. He seemed to be in the middle of a freezing winter. Behind him was a gray brick wall, and vague sounds of car horns and people speaking in a foreign language could be heard. Through the speaker, it sounded like the atmosphere of Europe. Jake smiled. His smile was as radiant and warm as ever, but now, in my eyes, it was just a fake and terrifying mask. He spoke, and his breath formed a thin column of white smoke, probably a software effect, or the hot steam from the coffee cup he was holding. "Honey, I miss you so much. It's freezing here, and the snow is falling. It's really hard to get around." I looked closely at the screen, noticing small beads of sweat on his forehead, even though he was trying to look shrunken from the cold. It was summer in Chicago, and even if he was in his mistress's air-conditioned apartment, wearing a padded coat would make his body react naturally. I held back a sigh, feigning concern. "Make sure you bundle up. Don't catch a cold. Mom is very weak today. She keeps asking about you. It hurts me to see you working so hard." Jake nodded with a look of concern, but his eyes darted around as if he were afraid someone might overhear him. "I know. Take care of my mom for me at home. The work here is in the final phase. I can't come back. How's the money at home? Do you still have enough on the card I gave you?" The question about money was always the center of all his conversations. I knew he was desperate for cash, afraid I would spend that small sum or discover the company's empty accounts. I lowered my gaze. My voice dropped, mixed with a fake sob. "Jake, I wanted to talk to you about this. Mom's illness has gotten worse. The doctor says she needs urgent surgery and special imported medicines that are very expensive. The money you left isn't enough. I was thinking, what if we sell this house? We could use the money to treat Mom, and I'll send the rest to you to invest there. Leaving the house empty is also a waste." Through the phone screen, I could see the fleeting panic in Jake's eyes. He almost dropped the coffee cup from his hand, and his voice cracked. "Sell the house? Are you crazy? That's our life's work. You can't just sell it like that. Mom's illness needs to be treated slowly. If we're short on money, I'll figure out a way to send you some. Under no circumstances are you to sell the house." He reacted more vehemently than I expected because this house was the most valuable asset, the last lifeline he was aiming for to pay off the mob. I feigned fear at my husband's raised tone and stammered, But I'm afraid it'll be too late. The doctor said if she doesn't have the surgery soon, Mom won't make it. Besides, I've heard rumors that the real estate market is going down. It's better to sell soon at a good price before it depreciates. I just want what's best for our family." Jake realized he had overreacted and lowered his voice, trying to sound tender. "I'm sorry, I was just too worried and raised my voice. Calm down, don't make any hasty decisions. Let me look into it, and I'll let you know. I have to go into a meeting. I love you." The screen went dark, leaving me alone in the darkness. Jake's panic and objection confirmed my suspicion. He needed this house. He needed it intact to mortgage or sell after I had an accident. But I wasn't going to let him get his way. I put the phone on the table. and a cold smile formed on my lips. "You want to keep the house? I'll sell it so fast you won't be able to react." In this game, the fastest one wins. The next morning, while the fog still hadn't lifted from the river, I called Martha, an old friend who was now the director of a well-known real estate agency in the city. I met her at a discreet coffee shop, far from my house and the clinic where Jake was staying. Martha, hearing my rushed voice, came immediately with a folder of documents and a tablet. She sat across from me, surprised to see the haggard look and unusual determination on the face of a woman known for her gentleness and docility. "I want to sell the house by the river immediately." My voice was firm, without any preamble. Martha was stunned, her hands falling to the table. "What are you saying, Eleanor? That house is a gem. Your husband loves it. Why the rush to sell? Does Jake agree?" I took a sip of bitter tea, my gaze distant. Jake is on a long business trip. He gave me full power to decide everything at home. I need money urgently for an important matter. I can't wait. I concocted a plausible and concise story in the current economic context. Jake had losses abroad. He got involved with the mob. Now they're relentlessly pursuing him. I have to sell the house to pay the debt and save him. If not, they won't leave him alone. Help me sell it as quickly as possible, even if it's below market price, as long as it's cash and the process is fast within a week. Martha turned pale and nodded repeatedly. "My God, how did it come to this? Okay, I'll handle it. Given your house's location and interior, if you lower the price a bit, there will be plenty of people fighting for it." I set the price at $2.5 million, about $500,000 below the market price, a figure sufficient to awaken the greed of any investor, and also enough for me to have a large capital to rebuild my life abroad. Martha immediately posted the ad in closed groups of high net worth investors with the headline, "Owner Bankrupt, Urgent Sale of Riverside Villa at Liquidation Price, Deal Today." The news spread like a poisonous wind. I knew that with her vast network of contacts, the news wouldn't take long to reach Jake, or at least his creditors. Just as I predicted, by noon, my phone had received dozens of calls from real estate agents and buyers. I carefully selected and agreed to show the house in the afternoon to a prospective buyer. This client was actually a trusted associate Mike had asked to pose as a buyer to legalize the cash flow and speed up the process, avoiding Jake's suspicion if he had eyes and ears following me. I wanted to create a false scene of extreme need so that Jake would believe I was desperate and selling my assets recklessly. That afternoon, I showed the client the house. I opened all the windows to let the sunlight flood the dark corners. I presented each piece of furniture, each painting hanging on the wall with the air of someone about to lose everything. The client nodded, seemed satisfied, and signed the deposit of $200,000 in cash immediately. The deposit agreement was signed on the same dining table where Jake had drawn our supposed happy future. I held the stack of money in my hand. The feeling was not of joy, but of bitterness. I was selling my past, selling my memories, selling my naive trust in exchange for my freedom. The news that I had received a deposit for the sale of the house spread through the neighborhood. Neighbors began to murmur about my family's bankruptcy. I knew that Jake, hiding somewhere in the city, would find out. He would be panicked, furious, but he couldn't show himself. He was playing the role of the husband in London. If he showed up now to stop the sale, his charade would end, and he would have to face the real creditors. He was trapped in his own web, and I was slowly tightening the noose around his neck. After finishing with the house deposit, I drove to a small phone store on the outskirts and bought a disposable SIM card and an old burner phone. I sat in the car and inserted the SIM card. My hands trembled slightly at the thought of what I was about to do. I didn't hate the girl named Chloe. Or, more accurately, my hatred for Jake had overshadowed everything. She was also just a victim, another pawn on the chessboard of that despicable man's ambition. She naively believed in love, in the promise of the family heir, not knowing she was being fattened for the slaughter. I reopened the file of photos of the insurance contract I found in Jake's safe. Besides my contract, there was another one in the name of Chloe Navarro. The beneficiary, of course, was still Jacob Miller, with an insured sum of $500,000. The date of the contract signing was only 2 months ago, just when her pregnancy was starting to show. It turned out Jake didn't just want my death. He had also considered the possibility of Chloe dying during or after childbirth. He wanted to keep the child and the money, completely eliminating the women who could cause him trouble. I drafted a short message and sent it to Chloe's number, which the detective had provided me. Do you think you're his true love, or just a fattened pig waiting for slaughter day? Look at this carefully before you keep dreaming. Attached to the message was a photo of the first page of her life insurance contract with the line, Beneficiary, Jacob Miller, highlighted in red. I pressed send. My heart pounded, waiting for the reaction from the other side. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Chloe's number. I didn't answer immediately. I let it ring for a while before picking up. I didn't say a word. On the other end, I heard the trembling, frightened voice of the young woman. Hello, who is this? Who sent me this? Who are you? Why do you have this? Her voice broke, mixed with choked sobs. She was probably in the clinic's bathroom or a hidden corner away from Jake's eyes. I changed my voice to a deep, cold tone. Who I am doesn't matter. What matters is that you're in danger. You think he loves you? He loves your money. He loves the baby in your belly, and he loves the $500,000 insurance policy if you die. Look closely. It's an accidental death policy. If you die on the operating table or fall down the stairs, he'll be the richest man. Chloe was silent for a long time. I could only hear her ragged breathing, the silence of extreme fear when faith crumbles. Then she broke down crying. It can't be. Jake loves me. He told me he would take us home. You're lying. You're that jealous old wife, aren't you? I laughed softly. Believe what you want. But ask yourself, why did he buy you an insurance policy without telling you? Why did he keep it all so secret? I believed in him too, just like you, and now I'm selling my house to pay off his debts. Wake up, kid, before it's too late. I hung up, took out the SIM, broke it in half, and threw it out the car window. I knew the seed of doubt had been planted in Chloe, and a pregnant woman is always more sensitive and suspicious than normal. Once she started to doubt, she would watch Jake more closely. She would see his slips, the intentions in his eyes. And when two deceived women unite, even if only mentally, that man will no longer have an escape. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw my face in the reflection, strange, cold, and ruthless. But I had no other choice. I had to become the hunter so I wouldn't be the prey. That afternoon, a downpour hit Chicago. The water fell as if it wanted to wash away all the dust and dirty calculations of the human heart. I drove to a law firm located on the top floor of an old building where Hector, an old college classmate, was waiting for me. Hector was known for being a brilliant but discreet lawyer, specializing in complex divorces and property disputes. I entered the office, took off my soaked raincoat, and placed the thick folder of documents I had collected in exchange for my trust and tears on the table. Hector took the folder. At first, his face remained professionally calm, but as he turned the pages, his eyebrows furrowed deeper and deeper. Upon seeing the copy of the $1 million life insurance contract and the handwritten note with the plans to fake an accident, Hector slammed his hand on the table. His voice was a whisper of horror. Eleanor, you're not living with a man. You're living with a demon. He doesn't just want your money. He wants your life. These traps, the gas leak, the brake failure, it's all too meticulously planned. I sat opposite him, my hands clasped together to stop them from shaking. My voice was strangely calm. I know. That's why I need your help. I want a divorce, but not now. I want to sign a power of attorney for you to handle everything in my absence. I have to get out of here, Hector. Staying one more day is one more day on the chopping block. Hector nodded repeatedly, his eyes filled with concern. Leave right now. The sooner the better. I'll handle the legal matters. With this evidence of him poisoning his own mother and the conspiracy to murder for the insurance money, he won't just lose custody or the division of assets, he'll face prison. But first, you have to be safe. We quickly drafted the power of attorney documents. I signed each page, the black ink etching itself onto the white paper like scars on my life. Then, I took the most important step in my counterattack, the money transfer. The $200,000 from the house deposit and all the money from my personal savings, which I had secretly withdrawn from bank accounts, were transferred to a secure international account Hector had helped me open previously. This was the money I had saved for 12 years, intended for our retirement or for children. But now, it became my capital to flee and rebuild my life in another country. Seeing the successful transaction message on the phone screen, I felt a relief mixed with bitterness. These soulless numbers were all I had left after a broken marriage. I no longer had a house, a husband, or a family. All I had left was myself and my will to survive. Hector walked me to the elevator, patting my shoulder encouragingly. "You're very strong, Eleanor. Live for yourself. Don't look back. When everything here calms down, I'll let you know." I left the building. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray. I looked up at the skyscrapers gleaming with lights. Somewhere, families were gathered around a warm dinner table, and I was alone and cold at a crossroads. But I couldn't afford to be weak, because my enemy was not just a wicked husband, but an entire cruel conspiracy that was about to devour me at any moment. The large kitchen was filled with the aroma of food: sweet and sour ribs, mushroom soup with pork hocks, and the smell of fish and soy sauce. These were the dishes my mother-in-law, Carol, used to praise every time I cooked. Today, I prepared a sumptuous dinner, setting out immaculate white porcelain dishes and silverware and a vase of red roses in the center of the table. At first glance, it looked like a small, cozy dinner for a happy family, but for me, it was the Last Supper, the farewell ritual for what I had tried to call a family for so many years. I helped Carol out of her room to the table. Today, she seemed more lucid than usual, probably because in the last few days I had secretly replaced Jake's drug with harmless vitamins. She sat in the chair, looking at the table laden with food. Her eyes glittered with greed, but her mouth still spat out harsh words out of habit. "What? Did you hit the lottery today to eat like this? If Jake sent you money, you should save it, not waste it. He works hard abroad, and you're just here eating and spending." I smiled, a superficial smile that didn't reach my eyes, and gently served her a tender piece of slow-cooked rib. "Eat, Mom. They're very tender. I wanted to cook something nice for you today, to celebrate you feeling a little better." Carol snorted, took the plate, and began to eat with relish. Seeing her eat so peacefully, without a hint of suspicion or remorse, filled me with an indescribable sadness. I had considered this woman my own mother, had cared for her through every meal and every dream, even bathed her without a single complaint when she was bedridden. While she was halfway through her meal, I put down my chopsticks and looked her straight in the eye. My voice was low, serious, and full of meaning. "Mother, I'm asking you sincerely for the last time. Do you know where Jake is?" Carol, who was bringing a bite of rice to her mouth, stopped. She looked at me. Her eyes darted around like a cornered mouse, and she immediately regained her fierceness to hide her shock. She slammed her chopsticks on the table and shouted, "What nonsense are you asking? Where would he be if not in London?" He called me. He said it was very cold there. "You're his wife, and you're suspicious like Othello, always spying on your husband. He's earning money for you, for this house, and instead of being loyal, you're interrogating me?" The lies flowed from her mouth fluently, without stumbling, without shame. She was blindly defending her son, ignoring the truth, ignoring her own conscience. I looked at her. The disappointment had transformed into absolute coldness. She knew Jake was here, she knew he had a mistress, she knew he was deceiving me, but she still chose to play her son's game to the end. She didn't even know that her precious son, whom she was covering for, had been poisoning her every night to keep her sedated. Her ignorance and cruelty cut the last emotional tie between us. "Yes, I know, Mother. I was just asking," I replied softly, getting up to clear the plates. I had my answer, and I had made my decision about her fate. I wouldn't leave her in the house because it would soon have a new owner who would kick her out immediately, but I wouldn't take her with me either. I would no longer be the unpaid servant of such a cruel woman. The persistent night rain dragged on as if it wanted to sink the entire city into darkness. In the large living room of the house, the crystal chandelier still shone splendidly, but the atmosphere was unusually grim and cold. The buyer's representative, a middle-aged man of few words, had arrived to complete the final paperwork. He reviewed the documents, checked the signatures, and nodded to his assistant to execute the transfer of the remaining money. A beep echoed from my phone, announcing that the money had arrived in the account. A huge sum, but in exchange for the loss of an entire chapter of my life, I signed the handover document. My stroke was decisive, as if cutting a painful tumor from my body. "Thank you, Mrs. Miller. You have 2 days to pack your personal belongings. After 48 hours, we will change the locks and take possession of the property," the man said briefly, then stood up and left. I was left alone in an immense space that had just become strange. I didn't sit down to mourn. Time did not allow me to be weak. I called a junk removal service, asking them to come that very night or first thing in the morning to empty all the furniture. The Italian leather sofa Jake bragged about importing, the expensive walnut dining set, the sound system he cherished more than his wife. I sold everything at a bargain price. I wanted to erase every trace of him, to strip him of the material vanities he used to cover his empty ego. Watching the workers load each item onto the trucks gave me a sense of satisfaction mixed with bitterness. The house slowly emptied. The sound of footsteps echoed on the cold marble floor. I walked down the hallway, touching the white-painted walls where our wedding photos used to hang, the photo I had taken down and burned in the fake fireplace the day before. All the happy and sad memories, the laughter, the tears, were now just emptiness. I only kept a small suitcase with clothes, identity documents, and a photo of my deceased parents. That was the only possession that truly belonged to me, the only spiritual support that helped me stand firm in this storm. I stood in the empty living room, looking out the large glass window, where raindrops beat against the glass as if trying to break through. Outside was a dark night, but I knew that by crossing this threshold, I would find the light of freedom. I would sleep here one last time tonight, on a makeshift mattress on the floor. The coldness of the floor seeped through my back, but my mind was clearer than ever. I remembered the past days, my naive stupidity in believing in him forever. But it was also this pain that forged me into a different person, more resilient, more ruthless when necessary. This house would belong to someone else tomorrow, and my life, from tomorrow on, would be under my control, no longer dependent on anyone, especially that man named Jake. I woke Carol, helped her clean up, and put her in fresh clothes. Carol looked dazedly at the empty room, with no TV, no closets. Her voice was frightened. "What's wrong with the house? Where are my things? Were we robbed?" As I combed her hair, I replied calmly, "It's not a robbery, Mother. I'm taking you to the hospital today for a new treatment. The doctor said you have to stay for a while for observation. The house, I'm having it renovated to welcome Jake back, so it's like new." Hearing her son's name and the renovation to welcome him, Carol's eyes lit up. She nodded repeatedly, forgetting the strangeness of the empty house. I helped her into the waiting taxi. I didn't use the family car, as I had also sold it to a dealership the day before. The car started, leaving behind the suburban house, which faded into the past. Carol, sitting in the car, looked out at the street with excitement, muttering about what delicious food she would prepare for her son when he returned, completely unaware that this was a one-way trip. The taxi stopped in front of a luxury nursing home on the outskirts, a place with green gardens and modern facilities. I had paid a year's fee in advance with the money from the house sale. It was the best place I could give her. The last complete gesture of my duty as a daughter-in-law. I wheeled her into the lobby for the admission procedures. Carol looked around, seeing many elderly people in wheelchairs like her. She turned to me suspiciously. "Is this a hospital? Why does it look so strange? Why are there so many old people?" "This is a luxury rehabilitation center, Mother. There are doctors and nurses 24/7. They will take better care of you than I can," I explained briefly and knelt beside her wheelchair. My eyes fell on her thin wrist, where she wore an emerald green jade bracelet. It was a jewel from my mother, left to me before she died. On my wedding day, I was foolish enough to put it on my mother-in-law's wrist to show my filial piety, hoping she would love me like a daughter. But in 12 years, I only received contempt and exploitation. I took her hand, gently but firmly, and removed the bracelet. Carol started, pulling her hand back, looking at me with fierce eyes. "What are you doing? Are you trying to rob me? This is mine." I held her hand, looking directly into her glassy eyes. My voice was cold and cruel. "Mother, this is my mother's heirloom for me. I lent it to you for 12 years. Now I want it back. You no longer deserve to wear it." I took off the bracelet. The cold sensation of the jade transmitted to my palm like a comfort. Carol stammered, trying to scream, but the nurses approached, calmed her gently, and pushed her wheelchair towards the inpatient area. She turned to look at me. Her eyes went from rage to panic, then to absolute terror. Seeing me standing there with no intention of following, I waved goodbye to her, a light gesture, like waving off someone you barely know. And then I turned away. I heard her voice screaming behind me, "Eleanor, where are you going? Don't leave me, Eleanor." The desperate cry echoed in the empty lobby, but my steps did not falter. I walked out the door of the residence, taking a deep breath of the air of freedom. There were no more burdens, no more ties, no need to worry about anyone's mood to live. The jade bracelet in my hand shone under the sun, proof that I had reclaimed my inner self. I took another taxi and told the driver, "To the airport, as fast as you can." I looked at my hand, where the ring finger used to wear the wedding ring. Only a faint mark remained. The trace of the bond had disappeared forever. Time flew by like an arrow. A year had passed since I left that land full of pain. Later, through the accounts of old neighbors and a few mutual friends I still kept in touch with, I managed to piece together the scene of Jake's return the day he believed would be his triumphant comeback. It was a hot day, and the taxi carrying Jake, Chloe, and their 1-year-old son pulled up in front of the suburban house. Jake got out of the car majestically, gesturing to Chloe like a king presenting his castle to his queen. He wore a light gray suit, his hair slicked back with gel. He wore a shiny gold watch, trying to look like he was returning from a successful, long business trip abroad. Chloe, holding the baby, had her face made up, but it couldn't hide her fatigue and a certain worry. She looked at the imposing house in front of her, her eyes shining with greed and longing. Perhaps for a whole year, Jake had painted her a picture of a luxurious life in this house, where she would replace me as the owner and be served by maids. Jake excitedly approached the iron gate, fumbling for the set of keys in his briefcase. As he put the key in the lock, he shouted loudly, "Eleanor, open up! Your husband is back!" So slow. I don't know what she's doing. He turned the lock, but the key got stuck and wouldn't turn. He frowned, muttered a series of curses, and banged heavily on the iron gate. The loud, metallic noise shattered the silence of the summer afternoon. He thought I had changed the lock out of spite, or that maybe I was sleeping inside. This stupid woman. Her husband returns, and she doesn't even come out to greet him, and on top of that, she changes the lock to punish me. Jake turned to Chloe, his tone full of contempt to hide his confusion. "Don't worry, my wife is just being difficult. I'll call her to open up, and I'll kick her out immediately, so you and the boy can move in." Chloe hid behind Jake, discreetly looking at the yard, seeing that the lawn was well manicured, but something felt different from the photos Jake had shown her. Jake pressed the doorbell insistently. The bell rang out, but the only response was a terrifying silence from inside the house. Not a shadow came to open the door, not a sound to indicate my presence. Jake's patience began to wear thin. He took out his phone to call me, but remembered that my number hadn't worked for a year. Anger erupted. He started kicking the door forcefully, shouting my name with the most vulgar words, which made curious neighbors open their windows with expressions of intrigue and pity. He didn't know that the woman he was insulting was halfway across the world, and that this house had ceased to be ours long ago. The sound of the banging finally got a response, but it wasn't me. The heavy wooden door swung open. A strange, fat, and muscular man with a dragon and phoenix tattoo on his back came out. He was holding the leash of a German shepherd as big as a calf, which bared its teeth, ready to attack. The man looked at Jake through the iron gate. His eyes were fierce, as if he wanted to devour the one who had interrupted his nap. His voice was hoarse and rough. "Who are you? You got a death wish or something? Banging on my house like that." Jake was petrified, pale as death. He took a few steps back, stammering, "Who? Who are you? Why are you in my house? Where's my wife? Where's Eleanor?" The man laughed disdainfully. He spat on the ground. "Your house? Are you crazy? I bought this house a year ago, with papers and a notary. The title deed is in my name. I don't know anything about any Eleanor. I just know the former owner sold the house to pay off debts and left the country ages ago." The man's sentence was like a thunderclap in Jake's ear, leaving him rooted to the spot. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He tried to shout, "You're lying! This is my house!" "I was on a business trip abroad. My wife stayed to look after it. How dare she sell it without my signature? You're a scammer who took over my house." The man didn't bother to argue. He went back inside, took out a copy of the house purchase documents, and threw it in Jake's face through the gate. "Open your damn eyes and look. Notarized contract with your wife's signature and yours. Your wife said you gave her power of attorney to sell to pay off mob debts. Now get lost before I let the dog loose to chew you to death." Jake picked up the trembling paper and saw his signature right next to mine. He froze. He remembered the numerous complicated power of attorney documents he had signed hastily before his fake trip to London. He thought they were company papers, but it turned out to be the power to sell the house. Chloe, hearing this, felt her legs give way. The baby in her arms screamed from the heat. She realized the truth, snatched the paper from Jake, and screamed, "You lied to me. You said this was your house, that I would be the queen. Where's the house? Where's the money? You're a broke phony," Chloe cried and lunged to scratch Jake. The screams, the babies crying, and the dogs barking mixed into a chaotic scene. Neighbors came out to gawk. They laughed and murmured about the unfaithful husband who thought he had struck it rich abroad and returned empty-handed, with his clever wife having sold the house. Jake was at the center of the storm, his head bowed in humiliation. He realized he had not only lost the house and his wife, but had become a laughingstock. His dream of being a king had vanished right at the gate of the house that was once his. Chased away by the new owner and scratched by Chloe in the street, Jake felt like a wounded and cornered animal, forced to hustle his mistress and son into a taxi and leave in shame. Sitting in the car, only a few coins remained in his pocket. The rest had been spent on his days of revelry in the U.S. under the guise of an expat on a business trip. Suddenly, he remembered his mother. The thought of his mother shone like the last ray of hope. "That's it, Mom. That old bat wouldn't dare abandon her. She'll know where she went, where she hid the money," he muttered and told the driver to go to the address of the nursing home he found in an old text message I had sent him. A message he had ignored while he was having fun with his mistress. The car stopped in front of the nursing home, hidden on the outskirts. It no longer had the luxurious look from when I took his mother there. After a year, the place looked run down and gloomy. Jake rushed to the reception, asking for Carol. The employee looked at him with pity, opened a thick logbook, and sighed. "You're Carol's son? Why are you only coming now? The lady waited anxiously for you for a whole year. The fee Mrs. Eleanor paid ran out 3 months ago. We called the number she left, but it was disconnected. Now the lady is in the social support wing. It's very tough." Jake was stunned. He hurried to follow the employee's directions. The wing for indigent seniors was in the back, dark and with a strong smell of disinfectant mixed with a stale odor. He saw his mother, Carol, huddled in an old wheelchair in a corner of the hallway. She was gaunt, her white hair disheveled, her dull eyes staring into space. The dress she wore was worn out and stained with old food spills. "Mom, it's me, Jake. I came back for you." Jake approached and knelt at her feet, tears in his eyes. Carol, hearing her son's voice, turned her head. Her glassy eyes narrowed, staring at the face of the man in front of her. And then, instead of hugging him and crying with joy as Jake had imagined, Carol suddenly trembled with rage. With the little strength she had left, she raised her skeletal hand and slapped Jake hard across the face. "Ungrateful son! Bastard! Where have you been? You abandoned me here to be despised. Your wife left? Sold the whole house. Why did you come back? Did you come back to see if I was dead?" She screamed and hit him. Her cry was hoarse and heartbreaking. Jake remained motionless, taking the punishment. Each slap from his mother was a whip to his dark conscience. He realized that the greatest punishment was not losing money, but the rejection of the person who had given birth to him. The nursing assistant ran to intervene, pointing to a long list of medical debts. "Look, please, pay these 3 months. Between medication and diapers, it's over $2,000. If you don't pay, we'll have to transfer her to the State Social Assistance Center." Jake held the bill with trembling hands. He had to count every cent in his pocket, even for the taxi. Where was he going to get $2,000? Chloe, standing far away holding the baby, watched the pathetic scene. Her gaze went from disappointment to contempt. She realized she had gambled her life on a man who was not only broke but also a burden. Jake dragged himself away from the residence. His mother's wails echoed in his ears like an obsessive curse. He had never thought he would reach such a desperate situation that he couldn't even pay a few $1,000s in medical expenses for his mother. But the real nightmare was just beginning. When he returned to the company that had once been his pride, the empire he had boasted about to the world, the glass door of the office was covered with red seals from the IRS and the bank. He was petrified. Staring at the notice of property seizure for the execution of the judgment, he felt the earth crumble beneath his feet. It turned out that before I left, I had sent a complete file with all the financial irregularities, tax evasion, and fraudulent contracts Jake had committed over 3 years to the authorities. The numbers don't lie. They coldly expose the greed and recklessness of someone who wanted to get rich quick through illicit means. Jake's phone rang non-stop. They were no longer calls of congratulations or invitations to collaborate, but threats smelling of blood from the mob. The quick loans for crypto gambling had now generated compound interest, turning into a giant monster ready to devour him at any moment. Jake quickly turned off the phone, threw away the SIM card, and a cold sweat drenched his back. He returned to the miserable rental house in the dark, damp alley where Chloe waited impatiently, and the baby cried. Seeing him return empty-handed, without money or food, Chloe threw a dirty diaper into a corner and screamed, "You're back empty-handed again? The child is crying from hunger. He needs milk. You said you were a tycoon, that you had a mansion, a company. Why are we here in this dump?" "Shut up. Stop yelling. My head hurts," Jake shouted back. His face showed the ferocity of a wounded, cornered animal. He rushed to rummage through Chloe's purse, looking for money to buy alcohol. Chloe, frightened, fought back. They struggled, pushing each other in the cramped, musty-smelling room. "That's the last money I hid to buy porridge for the child. You're a bastard! I regret trusting you. I regret wasting my youth following a con man like you." Chloe screamed with tears in her eyes, hugging her baby tightly as if it were her last shield. Jake looked at his young and beautiful mistress, now disheveled, her face sunken from lack of sleep and food. He suddenly let out a bitter, wild laugh. He realized that without money, the love he had hailed as true was as fragile as paper. He remembered me, his faithful wife, the one who shared instant noodles with him, who stayed up all night putting damp cloths on his forehead when he was sick, the woman he had cruelly abandoned. Late regret crept into his mind, but it was quickly overshadowed by fear. One rainy, windy afternoon, Jake was huddled in a street food stall. In front of him, a plate of white rice with a few pieces of salty braised tofu. He ate voraciously like a starving man, ignoring the contemptuous look from the stall owner when he asked for more simple broth. On the old TV hanging on the wall, a cultural news program was airing a story. The crackling sound mixed with the noise of car horns. Jake looked up distractedly, and the spoon he was holding fell to the floor with a clatter, the rice scattered. On the television screen, an elegant and sophisticated woman was smiling while being interviewed. She wore an exquisitely tailored white pantsuit, her long black hair loose, her bright eyes radiating confidence and power. The text running below the screen read, "American entrepreneur Eleanor B., who is bringing contemporary Spanish art to the world, returns to the country to invest in a multi-million-dollar cultural center project." It was me. It was Eleanor. The wife Jake thought would be finished, living in some corner in poverty and humiliation. Jake rubbed his eyes repeatedly, not daring to believe what he was seeing. The woman on television was too radiant, too distant from the image of the submissive, suffering wife of before. I spoke of art projects, of funds for young talents, of my aspiration to contribute to my country. My voice was still deep and warm, but now it carried an inner strength that inspired respect. Jake looked at his tattered clothes and then at my image on the screen. The sharp contrast made him feel as if someone had slapped him. She didn't die." "She's so rich," Jake murmured. His trembling hand touched the TV screen as if trying to touch a mirage. He remembered the $50,000 he had thrown at me before he left. He remembered the contempt he felt for me. It turned out I had not only not given up, but had resurfaced stronger than ever. In his mind, the calculations started churning again. He thought of the colossal debt weighing on his shoulders. He thought of his current fugitive life. If I was so rich and successful, and on paper, we were still not officially divorced, he was still the legal husband. He had rights, at least the right to share in that wealth. Jake quickly took out his mobile phone, dialed my old number, which he suddenly remembered, but only got the tone of a disconnected line. He didn't give up. He asked the food stall owner and the people around about the entrepreneur Eleanor B. Greed had blinded him, making him forget that between us now was an abyss filled with betrayal and hatred. After many days of frantic searching, calling, and harassing his old company and mutual friends, I finally agreed to meet him. The place was not a romantic coffee shop or a luxury restaurant, but the office of Hector, my lawyer, a place that represented the coldness and transparency of the law. I sat in a high-end leather chair, my back to the window overlooking the bustling city, playing with a gold-plated pen. When the door opened, Jake entered submissively. His eyes darted around, observing the surroundings, trying to hide his greed at the sight of the office's luxury. Jake tried to rush forward to take my hand, but two burly bodyguards stopped him. He stopped. He forced a crooked smile. "Eleanor, you're back? I've been looking for you. Do you know how worried I've been about you all this year? I thought something had happened to you. I'm so sorry." He began to play his usual role of repentance. Crocodile tears welled up in his eyes. His voice cracked, like that of a loving husband who had been separated for a long time. I swiveled the chair to face him. In my eyes, there was no longer love or resentment, only pity for a cornered man. "Were you worried about me, or about your missing ATM?" I asked. My voice was calm but sharp as a razor. Jake was startled and stammered, "What are you saying? We've shared so many years of affection. Why would you think that of me? I know I made a mistake with Chloe, but it was just a man's weakness. She tricked me. She set a trap for me to have a child. I only love you, Eleanor." I said nothing, just slid a thick file towards him. "Look at it. Look at it carefully." Jake tremblingly opened the file. Inside was a series of photos of him and Chloe, in affectionate poses actually, photos he had sent to show off to his friends, but which I had collected bank transfer statements, and most importantly, a copy of a fake psychiatric report he planned to use to have me committed to a facility if the accident plan failed, in order to seize my assets. "You say you were deceived? Then who planned to turn his wife into a madwoman? Who bought an insurance policy, making himself the beneficiary, and then tried to cut his wife's car brakes?" I asked, each word like a nail hammered into his conscience. Jake turned pale. He dropped the file to the floor. The photos scattered. He realized that the woman sitting in front of him was no longer the docile, easily manipulated wife of before. I had in my hands all the evidence to put him in prison for life. "Eleanor, have mercy on me. I'm in debt. The mob is threatening to kill me. You're so rich. Save me just once. Consider it a charitable act. I promise to sign the divorce, go far away, and never bother you again." Jake knelt on the floor, begging desperately. Seeing him so pathetic, I only felt bitterness for my past self. How could I have loved and sacrificed my entire youth for such a despicable being? I stood up, adjusted my suit, and looked down at him. "I am not a charity organization. Jake Miller. You reap what you sow. The law will judge you. And I just came to see how high the price of betrayal is." Seeing that his pleas were not working, Jake's true face was revealed once more. He jumped up, dusting off his knees. His gaze went from pleading to hatred and calculation. He knew he had no escape, so he decided to play his last card, something he believed would force me to yield. He laughed disdainfully, a crooked smile on his haggard face. "You want to be so ruthless? Fine. If you want to play fair, let's settle the score. Do you think you've hidden the truth about the land your parents left you in the countryside?" Jake gritted his teeth, approached the table, and slammed his hand on the glass. "That piece of land in that forgotten town, you thought it was worthless and left it abandoned, right? But I know, and you know too, that it's about to be rezoned as a key industrial area for the state. The land price is skyrocketing every day. It's not worthless land anymore. It's a gold mine. It's worth hundreds of millions of dollars." I raised an eyebrow, not out of fear, but out of surprise at his audacity and the depth of his calculations. It turned out he had been secretly investigating my family's assets for a long time. He even knew about the rezoning better than I did. He continued triumphantly. "Your parents died without a will. You're the sole heir, but we are legally husband and wife. Assets acquired during the marriage, or the increase in value of those assets, belong to me. You want an amicable divorce? Fine. Give me half the value of that land, and I'll sign the papers immediately. If not, I'll sue you. I'll drag out the process for a lifetime to see if you can be a successful and peaceful businesswoman." I looked at him, feeling extreme disgust. He not only wanted my money and my life, but also wanted to tear apart the inheritance my parents had left me, the sacred place where I was born. "Are you finished?" I asked in a frosty voice. Do you think I don't know the value of that land? Do you think I'm so stupid as to let myself be cornered? I opened a drawer, took out another file, and threw it at him. Here is the title deed. Look at it carefully. In the section on the origin of use, this land is a personal inheritance, specifically gifted to me before we were married. My parents did the paperwork and specified that it was a gift to their daughter, not to be integrated as a marital asset. You can sue until the cows come home, but you won't get a single cent. I looked at him, my eyes sharp as knives. You've calculated your whole life, but you forgot one thing. Man proposes, and God disposes. My parents somehow saw through your dark heart and protected me this way. You've lost, Jake. You've lost everything. Jake took the paper. His eyes widened as he saw the line confirming the private property. His hand trembled. The paper fell lightly to the floor, just like his last hope. He backed away, mumbling, "It can't be. How is this possible?" Greed had blinded him, making him spend his whole life scheming to steal, only to realize at the end that he was a clown in his own drama. I pressed the button to call security to have him removed. The meeting was over. Held firmly by the arms by the bodyguards as they dragged him towards the door, Jake struggled wildly like a cornered, wounded animal. Not a shred of dignity remained of the man who had called himself a director. His face was red and swollen, contorted by extreme greed and rage. He clung to the wooden doorframe, his nails scratching the shiny varnish, creating a terrifying, screeching sound. He screamed, the veins in his neck bulging, directing his bloodshot eyes at me. "Don't gloat. So what if the land is private property? I'm still your legal husband on paper. If I don't sign, you won't get a divorce. You want to be free to sleep with another man, right? Keep dreaming. I'll drag you down with me for life. I'll sue you for abandonment and for not fulfilling your wifely duties." I remained seated in my chair, gently turning the pen. I looked at him as if looking at a strange and pathetic creature. Seeing that I didn't react, Jake thought he had me cornered. He smiled disdainfully. His tone shifted to a nauseating hypocrisy. "Besides, don't forget something important. You're a barren woman who can't have children. You've cut off my family's lineage for all these years. Now I have a son with Chloe. He is the heir, the blood of the Miller family. You're so rich. You have enough money for 3 lifetimes. You have a responsibility to support the child." Hector, my lawyer, known for his composure, frowned and tried to intervene at such a shameless offense, but I motioned for him to stop. I wanted to hear just how deep human shamelessness could go. Seeing this, Jake grew even bolder. He spoke as if it were the absolute truth. "Your inability to have children is your greatest sin. Now you have to use your money to redeem yourself. Every month, you have to send $5,000 to Chloe to support the child and give me half of the cash you have. If you accept these conditions, I'll sign the divorce immediately and give you your freedom. If not, I'll spread the word that you're a bitter, barren woman, jealous even of a child." I looked at him. Disgust rose in my throat, but instead of anger, I felt a bitter laugh for my own life. This man, the one who had been putting birth control pills in my drinks for all those years so I couldn't conceive, the one who used the very misfortune he caused to torment me, now dared to ask for money for the maintenance of his illegitimate child. He wasn't just cruel, his character was so rotten it was beyond redemption. I stood up, walked slowly towards him, looking directly into his greed-filled, bloodshot eyes, and said softly, each word deliberate, "Jake, do you think you still have the right to set conditions for me? Do you think I'm still the stupid wife from before that you can manipulate?" The tension in the room was palpable. The only sounds were Jake's heavy breathing and the monotonous ticking of the wall clock. I turned back to the desk. I unlocked the laptop that was in sleep mode. My fingers slid lightly over the touchpad, looking for an encrypted audio file I had saved as my last ace up my sleeve. This was the weapon I least wanted to use because every time I heard it, my heart bled with pain. But for a person like Jake, only the naked truth would shut him up. "You want to sue? You want to drag out the process for a lifetime?" "Fine," I said in a frosty voice. "But before you walk out that door to carry out your empty threats, I invite you to listen to this. Listen carefully, so you remember what you really are." I pressed play. A crackling sound was heard for a moment, and then it turned into the clear voices of 2 men. One was Jake's voice, and the other was the dirty lawyer he had hired 5 years ago. At the time, he began planning his fake trip to London. "Jake, this case is complicated. Your wife doesn't want to sell the land. They say it's her parents' inheritance." The lawyer's voice was heard. "Complicated? What?" "She's stupid. She'll do whatever I say." Jake's laugh sounded cruel and cold. "If she doesn't want to sell, just make her disappear. And it's over. I've already bought the accident insurance in my name. I just need to fake a gas leak or cut her car's brakes when she's going through a mountain pass, and that's it. I'll get the insurance money and inherit the land legitimately. Then I'll bring Chloe and my son in, and we'll live like kings." Jake's face, which was red with anger, suddenly turned white as a corpse. He was paralyzed, his eyes wide, staring at the computer's speaker as if he were seeing a ghost. He couldn't believe his secret conversation in that karaoke room years ago had been recorded. It turned out that even then, the lawyer, fearing Jake would betray him, had secretly recorded him to protect himself, and the detective Mike had spent a lot of time and money to buy the tape from him. I turned off the recording. Jake's disgusting laughter died out, returning a terrifying silence to the room. I looked at him, my eyes sharp as knives. "Did you hear that correctly? This isn't a simple property dispute, Jake Miller. This is proof of conspiracy to commit murder with premeditation and a specific plan. With this recording, plus the insurance file and the doctor's testimony about how you poisoned your mother, what do you think the court will decide? You won't just get not a single cent, you'll rot in prison. Your right to inherit from me was revoked the moment you planned to murder me." Jake trembled, his legs went weak, and he collapsed onto the cold floor. He babbled, sweating profusely. "No, that's not true. I said that when I was drunk. I would never do it, Eleanor." Absolute terror had crushed his initial aggression. While Jake was on the floor trying to find a clumsy excuse for his crime, the office door opened again. The light from the hallway streamed in, revealing the silhouette of a thin, haggard woman. She wore an old, loose dress, clutching a broken handbag to her chest like a shield. It was Chloe, the young and beautiful mistress from before. Now she looked as helpless as a trampled flower. Jake lifted his head, saw her, and a flicker of hope blinked in his eyes. He jumped up, trying to run towards her. "Chloe, you came! Tell her we really love each other. Tell her I never wanted to hurt anyone. Help me." But Chloe didn't run to hug him as before. She took a step back, hiding behind the bodyguard, her eyes looking at Jake, no longer with fascination or coquettishness, but with fear mixed with extreme hatred. I nodded. Chloe took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and entered the room, maintaining a safe distance from Jake. She opened her trembling bag, took out some crumpled papers, and placed them on the lawyer's table. Her voice was broken, sobbing, but each word was clear. "I came here to testify. I am pressing charges against Jake Miller for fraud and assault. He didn't just deceive Eleanor, he deceived me too." Chloe turned to look at Jake, tears streaming down her face. "You said you loved me. You said you would give me and our son a life of luxury, but in reality, you only saw me as an incubator, a tool to make money. Eleanor showed me the insurance contract you bought. You were planning to kill me too, weren't you? If I died on the operating table, you would get $500,000 and raise the child alone, right? You're a monster." Jake was stunned. He didn't expect his last resort, the person he thought would be his ally against me, to now stab him in the heart. He screamed, his face red, veins bulging. "You bitch! You listened to this old woman and betray me? I supported you, gave you an easy life for years, and you dare to bite the hand that feeds you? You're ungrateful." He tried to lunge at Chloe, but the two bodyguards restrained him, forcing him to sit down hard in the chair. Chloe sobbed, pointing to the bruises on her thin arm. "You supported me, or you beat me. Every time you lost a bet, every time you were drunk, you used me to vent. I endured it for my son, but now I know you were planning to take my life too. I can't stay silent anymore," Eleanor helped me realize. She saved me and my son from this quagmire. I watched the chaotic scene. My heart was unmoved. Two women, a legal wife and a mistress who should have been mortal enemies, were now on the same front to expose the true face of a despicable man. This unity did not come from friendship, but from a shared pain, from a late awakening to evil. Cornered, stripped of all his crimes, and betrayed by the person he trusted most, Jake's reason seemed to snap. He sat there, panting like a wounded animal, his bloodshot eyes desperately scanning the room, looking for the slightest escape route. But all the doors were closed, and the people in the room looked at him as if he were a piece of society's trash. Humiliation, rage, and despair mixed, erupting into a flame of madness in his mind. Suddenly, Jake started to laugh. A hysterical, wild laugh that echoed in the tense silence, making everyone shudder. He reached into his coat pocket, where he had been hiding something since he came in. "You're cornering me, right? You're ganging up to kill me, right?" he growled, his voice distorted and hoarse. "Fine. If I have nothing, you won't live peacefully either. I'll take you with me to hell." He quickly pulled out a half-liter plastic bottle containing a bright yellow liquid. He unscrewed the cap, swung his arm forcefully, and immediately the strong smell of gasoline filled the closed room. The liquid soaked the desk, the evidence file, and splashed on Chloe and me. Chloe screamed hysterically, huddling in a corner. Hector jumped up, shielding me. "Jake, are you crazy? Put it down, do you want to die?" But Jake was no longer listening. In his eyes, there was only destruction. He took out a red gas lighter. His finger rested, trembling but menacingly, on the ignition wheel. "Nobody come near me," he shouted, tears and snot on his haggard face. "I've lost everything, the company, the house, the money, and now I'm about to lose my freedom too. What's the point of living? I'll burn everything. I'll burn it all to see if Eleanor can still be a queen." The small flame of the lighter ignited, dancing before my eyes like a mocking demon. The smell of gasoline was suffocating. It was hard to breathe, and I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I looked at him, not with fear of death, but with deep pity. When greed and hatred consume a person, they become a torch, burning themselves and those around them. The small flame of the red gas lighter in Jake's hand could not become a great fire. The office door was kicked open. A group of plainclothes police officers, who had been waiting in the next room by arrangement with Hector, burst in like a whirlwind. A sharp crack echoed as a police baton struck the lighter from Jake's hand, sending it flying and extinguishing under the table. Immediately, 2 officers tackled Jake, pinning him to the cold floor, wrenching his arms behind his back as he screamed in despair. The strong smell of gasoline mixed with the sour sweat and fear that filled the air. I remained seated in the chair, gripping the armrests to keep from trembling, my eyes fixed on the man pinned to the floor. Jake's face was pressed against the marble, contorted with pain and humiliation. He tried to lift his head. His bloodshot eyes looked at me, no longer with the fierceness of before, but with a cowardly plea. The sound of the metal handcuffs, click, rang out coldly, securing the hands that once promised love and also signed the documents to betray his wife and child. "Jacob Miller, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and possession of a hazardous material. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The clear, stern voice of the police captain resonated like a death sentence for Jake's honor and life. He was lifted and dragged away. As he passed by me, he stopped. His weak legs gave way. Tears and snot covered his haggard face. "Eleanor, save me. Tell the officers I was just joking, that I wasn't really going to light the fire. So many years of affection. Are you going to let me go to jail? I know I was wrong. I swear I'll turn my life around. Ask them to forgive me," he cried desperately. His crying and pleading were pitiful, but in my eyes at that moment, they were just crocodile tears, the cowardice of someone who dared to play but not to face the consequences. He wasn't crying for the harm he had caused me. He was crying out of self-pity for having to face prison. I stood up, adjusted my pantsuit, and approached him, maintaining a safe distance. I looked deep into his tear-filled eyes. My voice was strangely calm, without a trace of emotion. "Our marital affection died the day you put poison in your mother's soup bowl, the day you bought an accident insurance policy in my name, Jake. You weren't really going to light the fire? If the police hadn't arrived in time, by now, we would all be ashes. Go and repent in prison. This is the last lesson I will give you on the law of karma." The police took Jake away. His haggard figure disappeared behind the elevator doors. Chloe collapsed in a corner, covering her face with her hands and sobbing, frightened and repentant. A week after Jake's arrest, I received a call from the nursing home informing me that Carol's health had worsened. Although I had promised myself to be categorical and severe, thinking of the 12 years I called her mother, I decided to visit her one last time. The nursing home, hidden on the outskirts, was gloomy under a fine drizzle. I walked down the long, desolate hallway. The smell of disinfectant and old age filled my nose, weighing on my heart. Carol was huddled in bed, intravenous drips connected to her skeletal arm. Hearing my footsteps, she opened her eyes with difficulty. Her glassy eyes, which had always looked at me with scrutiny and contempt, now only showed extreme fear and loneliness. She already knew Jake had been arrested. The shock had been like the final blow that severed her little vitality. Seeing me, she tried to get up. Her trembling hand reached out as if to touch mine, but pulled back out of guilt. Her voice was a whisper, interspersed with heavy breathing. "Eleanor, you came, didn't you? I thought you hated this family and would never want to see me again." I pulled a chair and sat by the bed. I didn't take her hand, just gently placed a bag of fruit on the table. "I came to pay the hospital bill and to say goodbye. Mother, I'm going far away and probably won't ever come back. Stay here, eat well. The doctor says if you follow the treatment, there's still hope." Carol shook her head. Tears welled up in her wrinkled eyes and rolled down her sunken cheeks. "I won't live much longer. Karma. The karma this family caused. I'm so sorry, Eleanor." Suddenly, she became agitated, gripping my jacket tightly. Her voice became urgent and sobbing. "Daughter, do you know why you couldn't have children all these years? It wasn't your fault. It was me. It was me." I froze. My heart pounded violently. A bad feeling washed over me. A chill ran down my spine. Carol broke down crying, confessing the terrible truth she had hidden for a decade. "Many years ago, I went to a fortune teller, and she told me that your age was incompatible with Jake's, that if you had a son, his father would die young. I was afraid of losing my son, so I secretly mixed birth control pills into the tonic I prepared for you every day. I'm sorry, daughter, I was so wicked." The world froze before my eyes. It turned out that my endless pain, my low self-esteem for not fulfilling my duty as a mother, had all been orchestrated by this woman. Out of superstition, out of blind selfishness to protect her son, she had deprived me of my right to be a mother, turning me into a barren tree in people's eyes. I looked at her. The initial pity completely disappeared, leaving only disgust and a numbing pain. I shot up, pulling my hand away from hers as if I had touched a hot coal. I wanted to scream. I wanted to reproach her, but seeing her worn-out body on the verge of death, all words became insignificant. The greatest revenge was not scolding her, but letting her die slowly in remorse and loneliness. I took a deep breath. I swallowed my tears. My voice was cold. "Rest easy. I won't sue you. I will let you live out your remaining days to gnaw on your own guilt. The hospital payment is my last act of kindness as a daughter-in-law. Goodbye." I turned and left decisively, leaving behind Carol's late sobs of repentance, which were drowned out by the sound of the rain outside the window. On sentencing day, the Chicago sky was unusually blue. I, dressed in an elegant white pantsuit, sat in the spectators' row. My heart was as calm as a placid lake. Jake was in the defendant's dock, his head bowed, his hair shaved, his black and white striped jumpsuit making him look even more gaunt and small. He didn't dare look at anyone, not even Chloe, who was sitting in the witness row with swollen eyes. The presiding judge read the indictment in a resonant voice, meticulously listing each charge against Jacob Miller: fraud, embezzlement, forgery of documents, attempted murder with premeditation, and malice aforethought. Each charge was like a hammer blow sealing the door of his freedom. Chloe had testified honestly, handing over all the evidence, including Jake's threats, which allowed the authorities to close the case quickly. The defendant, Jacob Miller, with a cruel and despicable character and for base motives, threatened the life and health of others. This court sentences the defendant to 20 years in prison. The judge's gavel sounded loud and definitive, ending the life of a man of insatiable greed. Jake staggered. He had to be held up by 2 court officers to stay on his feet. He turned his head. His eyes met mine for the last time. In them was pleading, regret, and despair. But I only responded with an indifferent look. The session ended. I walked out of the courtroom, feeling the warmth of the sun caress my skin. Chloe ran after me with her son in her arms and called me with a hesitant voice. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I know my apologies are worthless, but I am truly repentant. I'm taking my son back to my hometown. I'll farm the land, do small business to support him, and stay away from the city." I looked at the young woman, also a victim of deceit, and nodded gently. "Go back to your life. Rebuild your life. The child is not to blame. Raise him well. Don't let him follow in his father's footsteps." I gave Chloe a small envelope with some cash. Not much, but enough for her and her son to take a bus back to their town and survive the first difficult days. Chloe broke down crying. She thanked me repeatedly and left alone with the baby. Seeing her figure fade away, I felt my chest lighten. All the debts, the hatred, the deceit, and the pain of the last 12 years, it had all been packed up and buried behind that courtroom door. Hector approached me, handed me the divorce decree. "It's legal. Congratulations, Eleanor. You are completely free. From today on, you are Eleanor B., an independent and happy woman." I took the thin but meaningful paper. A faint smile formed on my lips. This paper was not just the end of a marriage, but my passport to enter a new life, where I would live for myself, full and radiant. The first morning of my life in freedom. I woke up when the city was still slumbering under the morning mist. I went out to the balcony of the luxury apartment I had temporarily rented. With a cup of hot chamomile tea in my hand, I took a deep breath of the fresh dawn air. Below me, the Chicago River meandered peacefully. The surface of the water shimmered, reflecting the first rays of sunlight like liquid gold. Cargo ships sailed slowly. The sound of their distant sirens sounded strangely peaceful. I remembered that 12 years ago, also by this river, I was a young woman full of dreams, believing in eternal love and self-sacrifice. I poured my entire soul and youth into the well-being of another person, only to receive a total betrayal. But now, standing here, I no longer felt pain or resentment. The pain was like an old scar. It reminded me of what I had been through, but it no longer bled. It no longer hurt. The phone rang on the table, signaling a new email. I opened it. It was an invitation from an international art association. They were formally inviting me to participate in a solo exhibition in Singapore next month. My art collection was called Rebirth. The paintings, created with my own tears and awakening during lonely nights, had touched the hearts of the Art Council. This was not just recognition of my talent, but the door to a new horizon, a place where I could live my passion, which had been buried under the weight of life, money, and wifely duties. I took a sip of tea. The sweet taste spread across my tongue. I looked towards the horizon, where the sun was slowly rising, deep red, dispelling the lingering gray clouds. Life is like that river. It has bends. Sometimes it flows violently, but in the end, it always flows into the vast ocean. I thought I had lost everything, but it turned out that by letting go of what did not belong to me, I gained the whole world. I went back inside, starting to pack for the next trip. This time, it was not an escape in the rain and night, but a journey of pride and hope. I would carry with me the memory of the rainy days to appreciate the sunny ones. The future may present more challenges. I might fall in love again, or I might choose a life of proud singlehood, but that no longer matters. What